We have a little bit overdue today, but we finally start. So, my name is Magdalena Kączkowska, and I am Power Platform developer in Avanite. And today we have a special guest. Konrad would like to present his task about why a nerd like me bets on Web3. I suppose, and all about this topic I will learn right now. So we won't late this meeting. And Konrad, go ahead. Stage is yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the introduction. And exactly, the topic is Web3, which is a topic not always loved, let's say. So that would be a little bit controversial talk. It depends, because there are fans, there are anti-fans. We will see. I will try to make some my description. How do I perceive the whole topic? So I'm a nerd. So where I was, I can say I am a .NET developer still, and I'm a .NET developer for many years. So I'm a typical, let's say, classic developer doing backends and other stuff in .NET ecosystem, writing books, talking about .NET, making courses about .NET, making games about .NET, and blogging about .NET, everything about .NET, which is just this classic technology. But you can also perceive me as a person that was always interested in low-level stuff and performance and how do things work and so on. So, and I'm my brand, let's say, personal brand that you can see on internet is connected with performance. So then people might be sometimes surprised, at least, that I started to be interested in Web3, which is absolutely not connected to performance. At least it can be perceived as such, especially in the topic of blockchain and how blockchain is not efficient and so on and so on. So this talk is about a little bit of how do I perceive blockchain and Web3 and why I bet on it, that it is not only the bad thing in general. So the whole talk is like, explain me like maybe not 5 but 14 what is Web3 in general, and does it make even any sense to think about Web3, and what it is in the end, and why why I even started to do so. As I said, I'm a nerd and performance related, let's say. But at some time last year, it was really hard to not see that there was a lot, but I can say there is still a lot of hate, hype, and love, and misunderstandings around the Web3 and blockchain. So it is really polarizing people, and some are hating it, some are loving it. Super bipolar distribution in the IT industry and beyond. It was in the mainstream that people were complaining, laughing out at it, hating it, loving it, and so on. So if something like that happens, such kind of bipolarization, I'm frustrated, and I really believe no one is right. Like, probably both sides are right or both are not right, but both doesn't. There is no side that see the whole picture, and I want to see the whole picture. So they are started to investigate, what is this Web3? Why so many people are laughing at it and loving it and hating it, tweeting about it? So maybe you have seen there was a lot of tweeting about this topic. So for example, there was a topic of tokens, there was a topic of NFTs. People were laughing at the topic at the NFTs in general. So for example, Jeffrey Huntley, which is, by the way, also related to .NET at least a little, created the page that has contained every NFT image published at the time of this joke, called and called it the NFT Bay. So it resembles the Pirate Bay, and yeah, that was funny that people were buying NFTs for thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the joke was that Jeffrey Huntley just downloaded all the images and put it in as a torrent, so you can download all of it at once. That was a funny thing, but for me, I mean, okay, it is fun, it is a good joke, but it cannot be so dumb idea that the NFT is just something that you can download, and it is the whole concept here. And obviously there are other sides, like if you start to investigate from the other camp, the one that likes and sees something meaningful in Web3, you will see that it is a growing market, and there is a pretty big market for various companies, for developments. There is a need for many developers. Here is the screenshot of salaries in the April of last year, where there was a lot of job simply and work for people that want to go into the Web3, which means businesses were building around the Web3 idea, and developers were needed. Many people were needed in the Web3. So what it is in the end? A funny joke that everything doesn't make sense, and it is just dumb idea of some images being sold for thousands of dollars, or maybe it is a serious business where people are hired for hundreds of thousands of dollars to create businesses and some companies around it. And for sure, I was feeling that the truth is somewhere in the middle. And this is a typical thing we can always observe when a new technology and new fancy things appears, like blockchain. And for sure, you have seen the Gartner hype cycle graph, like here, when every technology has its own adoption, but it is pretty always the same type, at least, of adoption. So there is a big hype growing and everyone is talking about it. There is a super excitement and the peak of inflated expectations, like it is called here. And after some time, people are started to be like this illusionism comes when people start to see it is not solving all the problems from the beginning of the humanity. So the interest is rapidly dropping, and then there is this slope of alignment, and eventually the plateau of productivity, when people really start to understand how we can start to use it in a practical manner. We start to understand this technology and so on. So the blockchain has exactly the same path. There was at the 2018, everything was on the innovation trigger, and everyone was talking about it, trying to, everyone has one. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people were excited, and some were triggered by it, some were going into it full time, and then obviously it was just maturing. So 2018, everything was here, and then we will see that from year to year this technology matures, and in the Gartner reports, some things are going over this slope and even reaching the slope of enlightenment. So for example, last year, the Web3 and blockchain Gartner hype cycle for it is like, okay, some things we start to understand maybe how we could use it. It's not only fear of missing out and going into it full time, but we start to understand how we can utilize these things. What do they do in the end? What we can achieve with them? So cryptocurrency, so those basic ideas around blockchain and Web3 are slowly start to appear here, like the cryptocurrencies itself, the blockchain wallets maybe as a tool, simply decentralized applications, and those fundamental ideas. Obviously, still new ideas emerge, like metaverse. Last year was also a lot of talk about metaverse. Typical phase when this innovation is triggered and everyone talks about it, but it is like the hype just growing. Exactly like we have now with the AI and ChatGPT. Everyone is talking about it. and we need some time to start to understand how we can really make super useful things on it. So at the time, last year, 2 years ago, everyone was talking about Web3, and Web3 was triggering everyone, and blockchain was super popular even in mainstream. In this year, we have something that is called crypto winter in general, and we could extend it to Web3 winter because the Web3 topics and blockchain topics has gone from the mainstream. Not so much is being talked about it, and now everyone talks about AI, obviously, which is good for Web3 and blockchain because we can now be here and start building useful things. Like we get over of this FOMO here and all the scams and all the running for money simply that was just being here and being done here, and now we can start more understand it and try to make something useful out of it. And I fully understand it that it is like that. So I thought maybe it is something interested in the ends. And for Web 1, I was too young, I could say, because I was simply too young to build the internet as we know it. For Web 2, I was just too stupid yet, somewhere in the high school or in the middle school. So or an university, so still too stupid to do something useful and meaningful. But now we have, let's say, something like Web3 revolution, so maybe that's a good time to make something meaningful. Just not to be too lazy and not miss this opportunity to create something meaningful in the next revolution that we can see in the IT, if we agree that Web3 is revolution. AI is a revolution too, and it may happen that will eventually somehow merge into one, or at least hybrid techniques that are used here and there, because it is all the revolution that we are observing. By the way, we haven't said that, but if you have any questions, jump in on the chat simply, and I will try to answer at the end. It is super nice to have questions because it means someone was watching and it was even interested enough to ask some questions. So please do ask. Okay, so here is a question that I could ask, but I will not, because probably no one will answer. But I'm asking how much of you has done anything related to Web3, because it depends to who I'm talking, and I expect not so much because probably the audience here today is not super yet experienced in Web3, which is good because this is a talk that needs. I want to explain the Web3 instead of providing you super advanced topics. One disclaimer. Obviously, this is. I will try to make this talk as objective as possible. I'm calling myself a skeptical enthusiast of Web3, which means I see a lot of dangers and not so interesting parts, and obviously not everything is shiny there, but still I see potential in it, big enough to get into it. So this is like my look at it, and this presentation obviously is also not an investment or any financial advice, so do not take any financial decision based on what I'm talking here. Just a joke, but yeah, it's better to be on the safe side. So this slide, when I'm doing this talk, sometimes is the most popular one and was the most tweeted slide from one of the talks where I've given on one of the conferences, because in general, the feeling and the vibe is that we don't need blockchain and it doesn't give us anything. And this slide resonates with such audience. Do I need a blockchain? No, we don't, simply. And in many cases, it may be even the right answer, because blockchain is not, a universal solution to every problem in IT. It is just one of the building blocks, one of the ideas that you can utilize in your application, in your business, but you don't need if you don't feel like that. Maybe this comes, there is a kind of a myth or misunderstanding, because at the beginning of this hype and interest explosion of blockchain, it could be sometimes perceived as a tool that was presented as solving all the problems of the humanity. Now you have a blockchain and it will solve everything. In now we can clearly say, because we have a crypto winter and people are not so interested, no, it doesn't solve all the problems of the humanity, but still it solves some. And what are they are? Simply, when we are talking about blockchain, the most important part is that it is related to Web3. So the kind of type of applications that we can build because of blockchain. So what it is, what the Web3 is in the end. And this is always this story. Web 1 was about just reading. So you as internet users could only read things that were written by someone else. Then we have Web 2, which is just now, and we create the content for internet, social media, blogs. I don't know what amount, what ratio of content is created by users, but I believe it is huge ratio. A huge percent of the content is created by us. And then the idea in Web3 is just to add one more feature, not only reading and writing, but also owning things. This is a nice story, nice narration, but it doesn't include in the end the main aspect, I believe. So I will try to put it from a little bit different perspective. This is the super sophisticated graph of the typical Web 2 application. So we have some Coco Corp, which is company created by me, let's suppose, and how it is happening now in Web 2 times is the obvious thing that we even don't elaborate a lot, because we are just so used to that this company is hosting everything. So it is hosting the code, it is maintaining the code, the state, the servers, whether it is in the cloud or on premise, it doesn't matter. The responsibility of the corporation of the company is to provide us some services through internet, but the code, the state, the data is in the end in the possession of this corporation. Not only in the possession, in the end, they are responsible for keeping it safe. They are responsible also to keep it closed, because maybe the code has some, proprietary things that they don't want to expose. So it needs to be closed. And me or Waldek, my friend, or whatever here listening, is using these applications, this application through internet. That's obvious. We are just using browsers or whatever and connecting to some services. So this is how it is working. This is the Web 2 application. But the problem is, maybe one of the problems, and maybe not one, the main problem that Web3 is answering: what if we don't want to have this entity, this company, the only one responsible for keeping this state, keeping this code, being responsible for it? So, because responsibility is nice, but also the ownership means that they are possessing all the data, all the facts about us, and in the end we are the products when they are earning money because we are using their services. And so, okay, Web3 is the idea to get rid of the company itself and store somewhere the code and the state and maintain it in a way that doesn't require to have this single entity, company, whatever you call it, the third party that is responsible, because, and I now need to use this word, centralize a way of maintaining this application. How we can do it? Obviously, we can think about doing something stupid, like maybe me as one of the users can store the data and the code. but obviously I will trust myself, but Waldek, my friend, doesn't necessarily need to trust that I'm doing good things and I'm not invalidating some states, and that in the end I'm doing and the application is doing everything it should do. The same story, we can move it to Waldek's PC or a server, but I will not trust the application if he will be hosting it. And then maybe we could store it both, like in a duplicated manner, but then everything will be fine until it will happen that the state of the application will be different after a few times. Let's say we are voting on something, and on the instance of his instance is saying that the result of the voting is X or Y, and my result is X. How and who should decide what is the real state? What is the truth in the end? In the end, here, what is the true state of the application? Obviously, we could delegate it to another third party, kind of the mediator or whatever you call it, that will say, okay, but the state is X, so you, Conrad, has right, your application is the correct state. But if we will do this, this will be in the end it will be another centralization, because we need some judge, we need some mediator that will just be saying what's the truth. So what's the purpose of all this trouble if in the end we are centralizing the final decision? We cannot centralize the final decision, and really the only way we can do it is just to make it in a really decentralized way. So we need scale, we need decentralization, we need the true the duplication of everything. If we will duplicate, the idea is now closer to what the blockchain is doing, and in general what Web3 is trying to solve. If we will multiplicate the application multiple times and the state multiple times, then we have the voting mechanism that will be responsible for stating what's the truth. If all the nodes, like here, will be saying that the result of the vote is X, that's fine. Apparently, the result of the vote, the state is X, and everyone agrees. So I or Waldek may trust this final state, and okay, that's the final state. Obviously, the problem will be when one of the nodes, one of the instances, however you call it, will be will be saying that the state is different. So there will be kind of a bad actor. It doesn't need to be bad because it wants to hurt us. It might be just because of some state corruption, database corruption, hardware malfunction, whatever. It may happen that in such decentralized network, one of the states will be different, and then those democratic techniques may arise, because if we will see, if the whole network is pretty big and we have, like here, 5 nodes and only 6 nodes, and only one of them is saying that the state is different, the network may decide, okay, so if there is such a outlier, let's get rid of it simply. It seems that the majority is saying that the state is X, so one of the actors is trying to lie, or it is just, in whatever the reason it is just not correct. Which is the clue of the blockchain. We need to have a big network of nodes that are doing the same things, or at least have a way of checking them themselves and each other. What's the final state? What is the result of executing code on various nodes in this network? So in the end, they are looking at each other and controlling themselves and each other to have the final decision about the final truth. What's the final state of this application? And because of that, not everyone likes Web3 and blockchain, because it doesn't sound super sophisticated. Like in IT, we like deduplication. We like small things. We like optimized things. We don't like the idea that we are multiplicating code execution or state multiple times to achieve something is not super pleasant. At least it doesn't sound super interesting for some. At least for me it is pretty interesting, because it really depends. Probably your mileage may vary how it is called. And another thing is why people sometimes doesn't like blockchain is that typically there is some final incentive why actors in such network should not try to do bad things. And that's also something pretty new in IT, that the algorithm itself is somehow connected with the economy. Typically, where we are studying algorithms, when you start to program whatever in IT, it was pure mathematics, pure algorithmics, some graphs, some arrows here and there. But here, for the very first time, blockchain itself has some economical, the economy and the financial and the money are the part of the algorithm itself. Unfortunately or fortunately, it may be super novel thing or something that should be forgotten immediately. We will see. For me, it is not super big problem. I like novel things, so I believe if it works, that's fine. The financial incentive is especially important because it may happen that there is a situation that let's say more than a half of a network is stating that the state is different. Like here, the state is not X, but we have 4, let's say, even bad actors, assuming that it is even a kind of attack trying to force different state. And by having majority of nodes in such a network, we could force such a state, because now if we will vote, obviously the result is the different state, because we have more nodes stating the state is Y than X. And here is this financial incentive, because it should be really almost impossible to break to create such big amount of nodes like that will be forcing their own version of true. What's the true in the end? That's the financial part of it, because it is in the end the only thing that people will be afraid of losing, trying to do something harmful: money or health, or life. Luckily, algorithms in blockchain are not connected to our health or life, but money were the obvious resource that should be at risk if you try to do something harmful in the network. So that's why in the end, blockchain and Web3 is all about voting about what's the true. But now we have super nice result. Everything is decentralized, because there is no single entity that states what's the true. And the bigger network, the bigger chance it is really the true, and the safer network is. So decentralization without the one authority stating what's the true, without one company saying what's the true, without one company storing all the data, executing the code. And that's why this own is sometimes, pretty often, or even always, said when talking about, added when talking about Web3. Read, write, and own. Why own? Because in general, ownership is based on trust, or even we can say on law. So we can say that someone owns something because law regulates that, and we can trust each other that it cannot be stolen. And there is always police or other services that we can rely on to force that state. So owning is the result of having the law that can be validated and checked. And in general, owning is the result of having a law. So I can own my car, I can own my gold bars, I can own my tweets, maybe. But I can't own my tweets. So this is something that people are sometimes have problem to wrap their head around when talking about blockchain and Web3. What is really ownership? When we have something physical like phone, for us it is absolutely intuitive. What does it mean that I own this phone? It's mine. It shouldn't be stolen, or at least someone needs to steal it from me so I will not own it anymore, because physical things could be owned because they are physical. That's the immanent nature of universe, that we can own physical things. But owning things in the cyberspace, digital things, is really hard to make, because digital things can be copied, and owning things there, it doesn't mean even it things I mean it doesn't make to store things, because they simply can be copied, for example, right? Because if I will copy an ebook or download an ebook, it will be just a new copy. So in case of digital world, owning doesn't make sense unless we introduce a law and trust. Without decentralized entity, that would be the best solution, that is responsible for executing this law and keeping this trust. So that's why we have blockchain. So all it started with Bitcoin. The idea was to have this ownership without trusted third party. So everyone can own something like Bitcoin. That was the name of this cryptocurrency. It is still the name, without centralized control. That's the main part, because obviously some banks, national banks even, could create something like that, like digital money, but it will be centralized. The idea here was to create this big network that won't be controlled by anyone, that will be responsible for introducing trust, law, and ownership that comes from them. So in the end, everyone can own something, and if you have a Bitcoin, it cannot be copy pasted somewhere. It cannot be duplicated. If you own it, it is yours. If someone wants to have it, it needs to steal it from you, exactly like with the physical things. And also the trust that we can transfer things between each other, again, without centralized control. So if I will pass to you one Bitcoin, the network should be responsible for executing the law and trust that it will be in the end transferred to you. It won't be double spent, that someone else or me, I will also give it, duplicate those money, transferring like physical things. Then Ethereum, as another iteration and pretty big innovation, the next level of this idea, that was extended not only, it was extended from money like Bitcoin to definitely more general idea of data and programs. So that was a really innovative things. Instead of just owning money, Ethereum introduced possibility that everyone can own something, but in this case, it is data without centralized control, and everyone can execute something in 100% trusted way without centralized control. And it is the centralized system that controls the law. A decentralized system that controls the law itself, which is the blockchain itself, based on algorithms, not on institutions. So everyone can control everyone else, but the result is that we can trust each other. And that's the whole idea, and that's why I bet on Web3. And I will end this presentation in few minutes, so slowly finishing. That's why I bet on it, because this is a novel thing. It is introducing ownership law, trust and executable law into the digital world. Obviously, you could do something like that, maybe with the SQL database and some certificates, but it is really hard to make it, or I would say even impossible to make it, without introducing centralization, because there will be some SQLs, there will be some certificates that probably will need to have some chain of trusted certificates and so on. So the more we will try to extend the idea to use SQL and certificates to implement it, the closer we will come back to the idea of the blockchain itself. And from this perspective, it's really interesting. So the truth is that in case of blockchain, the majority may says what's the truth, which is both super genius and simple, but it may work. Obviously, now we have a dozen of topics how we can agree on this, what's the truth. So we have a lot of various so-called consensus algorithms, proof of work, proof of stake. Those are implementation details that I won't cover. But one more important thing is that people are still laughing sometimes. Although there is a crypto winter, sometimes people still reassemble the fact that the Web3 is there. And there are laughs about it, that it is so slow, for example. Bitcoin is so slow, Ethereum is so slow. But you should remember, all technologies are starting from somewhere, right? And Mark 1 was also counting sinus for 1 minute, and no one bothers now about it because it is so much faster. Computers are so much faster. So Ethereum also needs to start. Ethereum blockchains needs to start from somewhere, and here we are. Ethereum, Bitcoin, other blockchains are the first proposals how we can implement this decentralized trust and executable law. And the roadmap here is much longer for many improvements that are coming to the whole ecosystem. So just to say one more thing from the part that is interesting from the implementation point of view, there are various. For me, one of the most tempting concepts, what we can do with the help of decentralized trust, is to introduce this idea that is utilized in various projects: decentralized autonomous organization. If we have a decentralized trust and executable law that is executed in a trusted manner, we can create organizations that are created by communities, organizations, even businesses also, that are cooperating on doing things. And we can create such DAOs which allows participants to vote on things, spread royalties, make some decisions, business decisions, trying, to make various business activities digitally on blockchain or whatever else. And they are becoming real decentralized autonomous organization when they can trust each other, because this code and the state is maintained by the blockchain and no one can tamper with it. No one can try to steal something, at least from the algorithmic point of view, because the blockchain itself is validating that they can trust each other. So I'm, for example, doing now a startup that allows you to collaboratively write books, and people are writing those books. A book can have a dozen of authors, and the trust here is that the blockchain itself will track all the changes, and the royalties will be calculated and spread between those authors in a trusted manner, because it is all transparent, on-chain, and executed by this program not by someone, by some company that is hiding these algorithms and data behind their servers, and no one in the end knows how it works. Here, the trust and transparency is important. So, in general, I'm not sure if we have few minutes, but I just would like to leave you with one example, because the core part of Ethereum and other blockchains that are coming after Bitcoin blockchain is that you can write those programs that are called smart contracts that will be executed on chain, on blockchain. And obviously, this is the logic of our decentralized applications. So they are super important part of Web3, because in the end, Web3 is just this. Some part of it is the typical front end, and some part of it is logic, for example, on blockchain. And there is this mix of various components. And here is an example of super simple smart contract that is just storing two fields, current name and age, and there are some setters, and there is even super sophisticated logic here that it is changing the state of this smart contract. And this language is called Solidity. It is the main language that you are using when writing smart contracts on Ethereum, but it really doesn't matter because there are others, and other blockchains are using other languages, and it is in the end, as you see, pretty similar to Java or other C-like languages. So the language itself is pretty easy to learn. Maybe some topics related to the blockchain itself, how it is then mapped to the blockchain and executed, is a little bit of learning, but the language itself is super simple. So now I would like just to give you this very introductory overview how you can map the execution of this smart contract to the blockchain itself. So you have this smart contract, it has two fields and those functions. And when there is, for example, Ethereum, you are deploying this smart contract to the Ethereum. When talking about Ethereum or Bitcoin or any other blockchains, you can see it from the infrastructure point of view as a big global worldwide network of computers that are just connected with each other through internet simply. So here it is visualization of it. There are various nodes, hundreds, thousands, whatever it means, depending on the blockchain size, of nodes that are talking to each other and doing something. And one of these something is executing our smart contracts. So when I have this smart contract and I'm deploying it, in the end, the code of this smart contract becomes the part of the blockchain. So every node all over the world becomes, after some time, after some propagation, has a copy of this program. This is this green box here. That is just the visualization that now the program, the smart contract, has been deployed, and it is duplicated in the end through the whole network. Starting from Poland here to the Japan or whatever, the duplication happens. And then it includes also the state, so those two fields. So we could say that both the code and the state of the smart contract is now duplicated through the whole network. And then we need some API to talk with it. So we are using some RPC endpoints. Typically, to use those RPC endpoints, we could run our own Ethereum node, but it may happen. It is pretty simple to run such a node. And then you can start to call this Ethereum node via RPC endpoint, which is just accepting some JSON calls. Obviously, the specification is open, so everyone knows what should be called there and whatever. But typically we are not running our own nodes, but utilizing some infrastructure as a service, in this case blockchain as a service. So there are various companies that are exposing blockchain as a service, like in Fura. It is just set of nodes that you can use to call JSON RPC instead of keeping and maintaining your own node, and then you start to call it. And obviously there are some IDEs to make this happen, to play with it, to start calling such endpoints and so on. And the thing is that when we want to deploy this smart contract, obviously we need to go through the same route. So we have our transaction in the block that will be executed on blockchain that keeps this program and state that we want to deploy. We are using it and deploying it through this blockchain as a service set of nodes. And after doing that, the code becomes the part of the blockchain. As I said, it is all transparent, so we will see that there is we can look at it through various explorers, like Etherscan is one of the most popular ones. The contract itself, after deployment, gets such one of the addresses, gets an address simply that we can start to use when talking to it from our front end, for example. So this is like deploying the code to the cloud, we can simply say. The cloud deployment, but the cloud is here the blockchain that spans the whole planet, for example. But after that, the deployment has been done. The Ethereum itself takes care of duplicating this smart contract to all nodes, and every node knows that our program is available under this address, which means it is not available under HTTP endpoint, like in case of whatever we would like to deploy on Azure or AWS or whatever. Here we have just an address like that can be used to call our program. And obviously now our awesome Web3 app starts to call it because we know the address, so we can start to call it. And through the same blockchain as a service set of nodes, we are calling it simply. But from that perspective, Web3 app always needs some front end. So even if you would be interested in writing Web3 apps or starting to learn about how to become Web3 developer, there is a lot of work for front-end developers because Web3 apps are still web apps. So there is a front end and there should be a nice UI, and whatever framework we would like to use here may be used. Typically React, Angular, whatever is used as a front-end stack to talk with the blockchain as a service nodes that will talk with the blockchain itself. Then we need obviously probably some front-end to host it and back-end to maybe have some logic of the front-end itself. So as I'm trying to say here, Web3 application is still an application. It's not. It was also pretty often kind of misunderstanding that people hearing about Web3 imagined that it is not using the internet at all because it is all decentralized and it is, living somewhere in a different dimension or universe. And no, it is just a new block that you can put into your apps. And blockchain becomes one of the alternative backends, like another kind of database with some fancy things like executable and trusted smart contracts. But still, the application itself is web application. The front end with the back end, with some typical frameworks to talk with the blockchain, like Web3.js. That is just having nice proxies for doing things on the blockchain itself. And if you'd like to, transfer some amount of Ether between two persons, there are many methods for doing such things with the Web3.js. So that's That's all. The main thing that may be surprising is when talking about Web3 is that there is no central entity that is talking who is who. There is no server that keeps our password and login because there is no central company maintaining all this. There is no central identity that can be controlled. And in case of Web3, the novel thing is that the identity is derived from our simply private keys. And private keys is a local thing that should be kept safely in our computer or in our hardware wallet that is then used to log into various things. And the private key that is on our machine, in whatever way it happens, it is on our machine, it is our identity provided by various extensions like MetaMask. And this is a novel thing. When you start to use Web3 based apps, you will see very always, I would say, a button which is called Connect My Wallet, because it is like login in a typical application. You are connecting your wallet, and in that way, the application itself, through Web3.js or whatever it happens underneath, is knowing that what's your address, what's your identity in all this network, because your privacy and your and the whole through who you are is based on your private keys, and this wallet knows your private keys, and it can prove that you are who you state you are to the application in Web3. And in the end, the Web3 app is something like that. It is simply web app with some nice logic that may be derived from the fact that you are using blockchain, which gives us trust without the relying to the third-party central authorities. And that's why I bet on Web3, because I believe new business models may arise from that. We could think about decentralized Twitter, like the dumbest example, which is not keeping our data somewhere on their servers, but they are kind of, public, decentralized, and you own those data. You own the control over what's happening because simply there is no central entity. And the trust that comes out of it, the trust that you can agree between various parties from all over the world to start doing some work, and the blockchain itself and smart contracts that are verified are controlling that you are not doing bad things, and the trust that comes out of it, that's the tempting thing that I see as a big chance in case of Web3. And that's why I'm not super concerned whether it will end, that the blockchain will die or not, because I believe Web3 decentralization and decentralized trust concept will survive, whether it will be still implemented in blockchain or re-implemented to something else. The idea is here and it is tempting. It doesn't mean that all businesses now will become a decentralized autonomous organization, because it cannot happen. But I believe in many hybrid solutions when new business models arises where companies are giving at least some part of power, some voice to the consumers, or consumers have bigger control over what they are doing, and in general the trust that is coming out of it, and new things that arises like decentralized finance is one of the use cases, the very most popular use case. When decentralized exchange, my example, for example, work, and the trust comes from the smart contracts itself, that people are exchanging those tokens and earning some benefits out of it without having centralized bank that is responsible for making it safe. And having all that, I believe that's a good time for questions or I don't know, whatever. Thank you for listening. I hope that I presented at least a little bit of what I'm finding it interesting. Obviously, I should also add AI, more AI, because now everyone is talking about AI. But that was the talk about Web3. So
I think that the AI is a very hot topic nowadays. So yes, of course, we could talk about this, but important thing is that I think a lot of people don't know exactly how it works Web3. So your presentation was very valuable. And for now, we have one comment. Can you ask? Can you?
decentralized. Yes, obviously everyone. The idea is not super novel. So yes, I watched it and I enjoyed so much that probably I will watch once again. And as everything in the IT, it is really hard to imagine something that haven't been invented before. Sometimes only we need a little bit time to implement something like the AI itself is not super novel thing. Sometimes we need some just for a few things to happen before. So yes, and by the way, there is a project which is called Internet Computer. If I reassemble it correctly, I will try it. The internet. Just a second. Yes, internet computer, which is a little closer to what you are asking about because some people were starting to work on the very first blockchain decided to make it a little bit different. So there is the internet computer project that is really going to the direction that the whole planet will maintain one huge computer that will be decentralized and keeping all the knowledge and programs ever created, which sounds obviously both interesting and impossible, but at least it is interesting to follow them because it is a kind of a different approach for doing those things.
Okay, so my thing is that it's great that you mentioned about Bitcoin in your lecture. I think there are very few people who are not familiar with this currency, and through this compression, they can better understand the very concept of Web3. So it was very nice. And for me, it's nice to see this example like collaborate book writing as you show us on your presentation. I don't know which site it was, but it seems that it can be good example how it works, how it will work in the future. Yeah, that there are a
Exactly.
lot of people can work on the one topic, one book, for example, and they can take the revenue from that much that they are working about.
Exactly. And important thing here is that again, we could implement it in Web 2, but then we need to trust someone's calculating those royalties, for example, and the whole voting mechanism during the book work. And then someone will store this data somewhere, some company probably. Here, the idea is to decentralize it. So the full transparency is possible so everyone can see what was the story of working it, what are the royalties, why they are such, and the more even important things, the royalties can be automatically distributed because we have also smart contracts for sending those money. So
Mhm.
the trust that comes out of it.
Okay, but one question still occurs me. Since we know that it's still just an application, how we can, and there is always a risk that operation of the application will be controlled by someone or company or something like this. So how can we trust it will be fair? It will be, I don't know, um, better than Web 2.
Mostly because it is all transparent. So those algorithms are publicly visible. So it is like execute GitHub, but being executed. So you can look at the smart contract code and you are sure that this is exactly the code that is executed. Because in case of GitHub, you see the source code and the
Mhm.
company might say, we swear that exactly the same code is executed on our servers, but they won't let you to their servers and database because it is their server and database, and it is all, security concern to not let them in. In case of blockchain, it is the code that you are saying that is executed, and the data itself is also visible. So it is like, imagine that the bank is just giving you the login and password to the servers, and you can log in and see log into
Mhm.
the database and also the deployed code. So the trust comes from the transparency itself.
Okay,
And
so sorry, go
so
ahead.
then you cannot lie, because it is like looking at the code that is exactly being executed, and there is no layer in between. Someone could change something or whatever. If you see the code, it is the one that is being executed, so you can trust it because that's the one.
Okay, but there should be someone who can check it. Not everyone knows.
Everyone
Okay,
can check
but
it.
everyone knows how to use it and how to check it. So there will be always a level. I know, you
Yes,
know,
I mean, you say that it's not like the regular internet user won't
yeah,
analyze the code of some
yeah.
smart contracts, but we can delegate it. Like if a smart contract is, public, then for sure there will be journalists or tech journalists or audit companies or any third parties that will be interested in discovering some frauds or whatever. So then we could delegate a little bit of this trust. We
Mhm.
can always hire ourselves someone. If I will like, to buy a house with the help of some company that is on chain, and I don't trust all audits that happened, I can always hire a company that will audit it for me, or few companies, whatever a number you will start to believe it is true. And it is now not possible. I cannot hire a company to audit bank that I'm using because the code is property of the bank. Here it is opened, and that's the difference.
Okay, and the main information for us in the future will be how many votes, for example, that kind of user get, or that
For
kind of,
example,
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, even now it happens that there are, really trusted companies that are auditing some applications, and if an application is saying that we were audited by X, it means for most people we should at least have a chance that we should trust them. The more audits the company passes, the better, because it means there's less chance that they were all corrupted.
Hmm, it's it all of this is very interesting, and but sometimes I think that I am a little bit overwhelmed, and it's big for me. Not that I'm not smart, but it's really a
There is a
lot
lot of, yeah.
calculation and different codes, and just how to use it, how to manage. So I am very grateful that you are in here with us and tell about how to, I don't know, understand this topic. But at the end, I would like to ask you about your
AI.
book. No, no, not this one. About your book, Memory Management. Can you
Yep.
tell us about something about this one?
Yeah. It is my opus magnum, one over 1,000 pages of knowledge about .NET memory management. Because, as I said, I was and pretty still I'm all in .NET. So um, it was something I was really interested in. I'd gained some experience, so I thought, okay, let's write it down in a form of a book. I always dreamed of writing a book, so that was a good chance of an opportunity. Unfortunately, during the book writing, it turned out that I don't know so much as I thought. So I started to investigate a lot. So it was even become bigger and bigger all the time. I discovered something new. But in the end, yes, that's the book about .NET, how the .NET manages memory, and what it gives in practice for developers also, what they should be aware of, what they should care of, how to monitor it, how to write programs with keeping that in mind. Because although it is all automatic, it has, as always, some edge cases. This is another abstraction, and abstractions leaks. So they may happen that you have a memory leak, or maybe just the program is slow because the garbage collector is so busy reclaiming memory. So there will be always some edge cases, and I'm trying to cover all of it in it, about particular about .NET.
Okay, so pages do you have in this book?
1040 something.
It's a
That's a
lot.
big,
A
it's a lot.
lot.
Yes,
It's
because, but it's like with the master thesis. It depends on the formatting. If you want to, if you will have big margins and big font.
yeah, I know, I know, I know.
The original English book was having, in my opinion, too big font. And
Mhm.
for example, Russian translation is very good because it has smaller fonts, smaller margins, and it is not so big book then. But it was not my decision. It was published by the Apres publisher, which has its own standards. So it was out of my control. But at least I can always laugh that I have written 1,000 book. Even better, it weighs 2 kilograms, which is even better measurement. Over
Okay,
to
and this is the end of our conversation. How much? What weight? What weight? 2 kilograms? Yeah.
2 kilograms. Yep.
And this is your child, I think. I
Yep.
think it's a great child. You.
Exactly.
So I am okay, and this is the great thing to for our end of our conversation.
Yeah.
And I am very pleased that you are in here with us, and it was very nice to see you and meet you in for this meeting. And what can I say at the end? Maybe that it will be nice to meet you in reality.
Well, I hope on some conferences, for sure, the pandemic is over. I hope so. So some conferences are happening at least eventually.
Okay, so we will watch you on your LinkedIn, for example, and maybe we can meet somewhere, somehow in the future.
Exactly. And just give a Web3 a chance. That's a overall message for everyone listening to us. It's not only a scam, it has nice use cases.
Nice idea.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you for this message for everyone, and thank you for this meeting.
Thank you
Have a
very
nice
much.
evening, everyone, and goodbye.